Fáilte. 1,000 welcomes to Crann Short Stories and Poetry for July 26. I'm Terrance Ó Domhnaill, your village scéalaí, back again this week with more stories and poems from authors around the world. I have 3 short stories and 3 poems for you. To start, I found some short stories about dragons that I'll be reading in the next couple of weeks, starting today. I have a different kind of ghost story, and I'm starting a new serialized space story from a writer on Substack that I started last week. Then I have a selection of poems for you to cap it all off. So gather around once more and let me read to you under the shade of the Crann beatha, the Tree of Life. So my first story this week is entitled Conversations with a Dragon. The Princess Doesn't Need Saving by Catherine Moore, published in the Crann Lore back on June 13th. Is it just me, or has the standard of men qualifying as knights sunk quite considerably? Lena pulled off her helm to wipe the sweat from her face, then bent to examine the corpse at her feet dispassionately. I think it's more to do with the quality of men in general, dear, not knights specifically. The dragon obligingly held the body down with a long claw as Lena pulled her sword from its guts. I'm not convinced you gave this one much of a chance, though. Ugh! Stopping to check his hair in a dead man's breastplate was my first clue I didn't like him. Telling me princesses shouldn't wear trousers or play with swords just proved my instinct was right. Yes, all right, you make a good point, she sighed, the breath ruffling Lena's sweaty hair. You could have let me squish him. She eyed Lena with an air of disappointment. Her large amber eyes narrowed. You got to squish the last one. Besides, I needed a workout. Lena stepped back, gesturing to the dragon. Could you do the honors, please? The dragon inhaled and directed a fine stream of white-hot fire at the deceased knight. Reducing the flesh to ash inside the now glowing armor, Lena wiped her blade clean and sheathed it with a snap. Do you think they'll ever leave us alone? They will never believe I am anything but a monster keeping you prisoner, the dragon growled, her crest flattening with offense. Most of them aren't even vaguely interested in me, you know that. The few we've managed to send away alive were the only ones truly trying to rescue me. All the rest just wanted my lands and title, or your skin, or both. Lena scowled, leaning against the dragon's warm flank. They would save me from your terrible clutches to put me in a new prison of their making. The dragon rumbled sympathetically, nudging her gently with her large snout. Lena absently scratched under her jaw, making the dragon purr happily. Maybe I should try sending another envoy, she said. They didn't believe the other 5 you sent. Besides, the last poor boy refuses to leave the castle again. They nearly locked him up for being a filthy dragon lover last time. True. Oh well, I suppose we'll just have to keep at it until they finally forget about us. Maybe we'll end up as a myth. More like a legend. The fabulous dragon and her princess warrior. The dragon lifted her head high as if posing for a portrait. Lena chuckled as she patted her. Come on, let's go and scrounge up some food from the kitchen. I heard a rumor cook was making cakes. Oh, honey cakes? The dragon lashed her tail excitedly and almost pranced away, Lena hiding a smile as she followed her. As they moved down the wide passage, the glowing breastplate began to cool, creaking gently as it did. Soon it was indistinguishable from the other soot-stained armor littering the hall, lying in silence, remnants of greed and failure. My second story is a ghost story, sort of. It's entitled The Real Ghost of the Tower. What Will Lotta Discover After the Death of Her Best Friend by Sarah Fellers. And again, another story from the Crann Lore. This one she published on July 18th. Lotta was told to keep away from the old castle tower. That looming cylindrical relic of the medieval eras long past only stood out of stubbornness. The stubbornness that belonged to it and the Cape man who she now followed inside. Was he the ghostly figure the farmers had warned her about? Lotta had bobbed her black hair, gathered her things, and left Mira City in the middle of the night. That man, Julius, would not get away with what he did to her best friend. Even if she had to chase him around the world, she would have her revenge. What few clues she had led her to a small farming town about 50 miles beyond the city limits. The townspeople pointed her to the old tower, but warned her to be prepared. Lotta was more than ready. Her blood still boiled. Lotta had since blocked the sight of Hadley's mangled corpse from her memory. She had been sick for days after finding her best friend, but she still knew that there was no way it could have been an accident. The sheer horror of it, Lotta forced her mind back to the farmers and back to her present. The man in the cape is said to be the ghost of the last king before the kingdoms formed into one nation. He may have died, but he could never let go of the throne. That was a legend they told. But they also promised the tower would grant Lotta her wish. This man that she followed, however, was no phantom. He was flesh and bone. He stopped in front of the yard's door that creaked as he opened it, and he waited for her to enter. "Can you at least tell me your name?" Lotta asked. He didn't respond. He simply turned and continued inside. The room they entered was a large, oval-shaped treasure trove of weapons. Axes, swords, crossbows, and maces hung on the walls. Maces, scythes, daggers, and cutlasses were laid on wooden tables scattered around the space. Guns, hand cannons, snipper staffs, and even hybrid weapons were stockpiled in corners and boxes under the tables. In the middle of the oval, a stone staircase spiraled up to the second floor. As Lotta passed the various tools of death, she could see they were each polished to a shine. She leaned closer to one axe, at first watching her own reflection. Then her image wavered and turned into something else, a scene. A giant orc carried that same axe, except it was dripping with crimson. He swiped it at an elf, barely missing her. The elf dodged. The orc tried again, missed. Swipe right again, dodge, swipe left, parry. Lotta couldn't hear the clank of metal against metal, but she could see it as though she were there. Another parry. The orc rushed in. The orc rushed in. The elf charged and thrust her sword forward. The orc collapsed, the axe dropping from his hand. The scene closed. Lotta turned and spotted the elf's sword nearby. Within its shining blade, she saw the elf in chains, being pulled towards a guillotine. The executioner ripped her sword from her belt without a word, as though she were nothing but the sheath. The elf's eyes flamed at the heartless audience in front of her. They appeared in the sword's reflection as faceless silhouettes of people, one blurring into the next. They cheered and yelled, but merely made sounds. The elf didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her grimace held both pride and rage until the blade came down on her neck, sealing her expression for eternity. "You can see these are no ordinary weapons," the cape man's voice surprised Lotta. "I see. These are weapons with memories. My question is if these weapons recorded these memories or if they were figments left behind by the owners. I guess I can see why you creep out the townspeople," Lotta answered. He laughed. "They don't lie when they say this tower is haunted. They assume because I don't interact with them there's something wrong with me. They are just simple townspeople. They don't have a taste for blood, which means they are useless for business." "Am I different?" Lotta asked. "You want revenge. I could smell it on you a mile away. What are you, part dog?" He removed the cape, and Lotta's jaw dropped. This man had the head and torso of a dog. "You're a kobold, and you can speak?" Lotta asked. He sighed. "I'm one of the few of my kind who are not driven insane." No wonder the farmers were scared. This man was something far stranger and deadlier than a mere ghost. When the kobolds went insane, they slaughtered without abandon, even going after their own kind. Instinctively, Lotta sprang back to one of the tables. She swiped a gun, cocked it, and pointed at the kobold's head. He raised his arms. "I don't want to fight you. I simply want you to look. These weapons all belong to those who did business with me and got what they wanted. Of course, it came at a price. The same price I paid and am still paying by keeping watch over these. Mine is around here somewhere. It tends to get restless," he explained, with a casual calmness that made Lotta's skin crawl. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. "All of these memories you see, these are the memories that drove their owner's soul to seek revenge. This tower was enchanted by a demon. Whoever comes here seeking vengeance will have their wish as long as they are willing to pay the price." "What's the price?" she asked coolly, but did not relax her arm. "They have to move on after their wish is carried out. It sounded simple enough to me at the time. The poor, wronged soul must be at peace. But look at how many weapons I am to watch over now. Not a single person has paid what they owe. So they are bound here until they can, just as I am." Lotta's hand was shaking now. She dropped the gun, her knees growing weak under her. That enchantment, was that a curse or a blessing? She asked. That, my dear, is for you to decide. But know this, in my experience, the path of revenge is the path of the short-sighted. Now, my next story, and last one, short story that is called The Gravediggers of Orpheus, Chapter 2. As I said, I read Chapter 1 to you last week. Derek raced through the empty hallways of Vulture 05, the gravedigger vessel. His every step clinked on the metal surface like a speeding heartbeat. Swoosh, one door, swoosh, next one, bang. The third one always got stuck. Come, Vulture, you old bird, open up. Derek cursed under his nose, letting the security lock scan his palm for the 5th time. He gave the door a kick. Swoosh. Good old brute force did the trick. Finally, he made it to the operation room. It was rarely used. Lately, the gravediggers found less and less survivors among the civilian corpses. Derek was the first one to leave the decontamination chamber and the showers. His hair was still dripping wet, but he had to know. He saw the medbots operating on the survivor. The woman was covered in tubes and wires. While the bots moved around her with a mechanical synchronicity. Doc Liz, the Vulture's only physician, stood by to oversee the operation. The front of her white overall was covered in blood. Liz was an old-school physician and didn't trust the bots completely. She looked at Derek through the glass wall and smiled, showing thumbs up. Derek nodded. 2 of them shared their excitement about their survivors. Usually, Liz had to patch up the minor injuries of the gravediggers or examine and prepare the deceased to be buried. Unlike other gravedigger crews of planet Orpheus, the Vultures took their time to bury most of the corpses. Only the completely mangled ones were cremated. Liz pointed at the operation room next to her with a beaming smile gracing her old eyes. Derek furrowed his brows. A strange noise came from the other room. At first, Derek couldn't comprehend what he was staring at. A tiny creature whined and wailed, lying in the glass incubator, whilst wood medbots hovered around it. Derek had never seen a human baby this tiny. It had extended its feeble arms and legs, and the baby cried. Derek had an inexplicable feeling the baby was calling him. All he could do was place his large palm on the glass surface. The rest of the gravedigger crew joined him, staring at the little one in the glass box, with wires covering its tiny chest. Derek didn't know how long they stood there in the silence, interrupted only by the beeping, screeching, and clanging of the medbots. What a catch, huh, Derek? Doc Liz suddenly appeared behind their backs. Her hair was wet. She was fresh out of the shower. The mama will live. We patched her up good, Doc Liz said. And the baby? Derek asked, not taking his eyes off the little creature, who seemed to be asleep now. Born prematurely, but she might survive. I wonder, isn't she? Liz smiled with her old wrinkled face glowing. Derek nodded. I want to give her a name. Every creature deserves a name, even if... Derek couldn't go on. The tiny new life and death were incompatible in his mind. He hadn't cried in years. Go on, Liz smiled, and the crew members murmured approvingly. Anouk. That was my mother's name. It's a lovely name, Derek. Doc Liz put her hand on Derek's shoulder. Welcome, Anouk. Stay with us, said Doc Liz. Derek noticed he wasn't the only one with tears in his eyes. So I'm going to take a break right now and listen to my little commercial here. And when I get back, we'll start off and I'll give you the 3 poems. So stand by and I'll be back in a couple of minutes. During this break, I wish to ask for a donation of any amount to help me keep this podcast going. I'm fine with whatever you can afford, using whatever currency you want. I've set up a donation tab on the Crann Stories and Poetry webpage at rss.com and a donation page on my website at www.crannabihah.com using PayPal for your security. Don't worry about the exchange rates, as PayPal takes care of that for us. If you like this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know in your social circles, as the writers I showcase in this podcast deserve all the exposure they can get. I created this podcast for them because I love to read their work, and I believe it should be shared with the whole world. Now I want to explain how to find my website. Since this show is audio only, just write down the website name from the podcast image showing here and search for it. Visitors finding the website for the first time will reach the welcome page to learn a little bit about what's inside. You'll see the homepage link at the bottom of the page. Click on it if you wish to enter my world. Once on the homepage, you will see the menu bar at the top where there are links to the pages in the website. Feel free to look around all you want. If you should happen to buy one of my books, all the better. Thank you for your support. Welcome back. I appreciate you tuning in here. So, now I have 3 poems for you. My first one is entitled They See Me Through That Sea by Bruno T. And he published this on July 14th. I feel cold as I pass. Through that sea my rain falls, mercilessly without apologies. The elements do not ask permission. They exist, just as I merely exist. From afar they see me. At that distance they can see my beauty, the natural mingling with the surreal, with the strength of a planet. Up close they see me. At that distance they can see my chaos, sadness, death, shattered dreams. In this center it's just me, observing and contemplating the strength I have. In the center it's just me, crying for those I drag along, the role that leaves me no choice. In that center I am what I am, because I am what my Creator wanted me to be. Mortal, beautiful, powerful, unique. My next poem is entitled Innocent. This World Lies in Pieces by Mariana Bosarova. And this one she published in July 13th. And Know Thyself, Heal Thyself. This world is departing and fading away, melting like dark waves at the break of the day. And the soul races onward on an eternal flight, trading dawn's golden glow for the depths of the night. Every peak has been climbed, undermined, and left to die by desires so simple, faceless, and awry. Then winds turn to storms and tear apart every boundary that keeps death from the heart. Down our rivers flow cargoes foul and unclean, stained with ochre, purple, and ruby sheen. A treacherous plan's either sunk in the sea, or driven like a wedge in the earth's flesh to be. In the wheel of time we place our cruel stakes, with a slyly devised modern flood in its wake. A star gone mad will cross our path one day, marking the course to the grave where we lay. This world lies in pieces, face down on the ground, like a pale dying hero without a sound. But the blame for it all, there's no need to deploy. It's so innocent, but by humans destroyed. My last poem is entitled The Window by Waqas Ahmad. And again, in Know Thyself, Heal Thyself. This is the one he came out with just a couple of days ago. The window, an open eye in the silence of the room, stares out at a world that does not pause. Its frame holds the promise of what lies beyond, a canvas of sky and street where moments drift like dust. Outside the sun speaks and whispers, leaves dance in the languid breeze, and the distant hum of life is a lullaby I could never touch. Within these walls I am both spectator and prison, the glass a barrier and a gateway framed by the ordinary silence of my own confinement. Yet sometimes when the light bends just so, and the shadows move like ghosts, I catch glimpses of freedom, faint and fleeting, like dreams slipping through my fingers. And I wonder if the window, too, longs to break free from its own transparent cage and leap into the wildness of the world it watches. In the stillness, I am both the watcher and the watched, holding on to the hope that someday I might step through and see the world from the other side. And he has a note here. A window, a silent sentinel, frames the shifting scenes of the outside world, offering only glimpses of freedom while I remain within its transparent confines. As the sun charts its course and the wind whispers through the curtains, I am left to ponder the divide between the quiet refuge and the vibrant life beyond. Each day I watch and dream, caught in the paradox of observing a world I cannot touch, hoping that one day I might cross this boundary and embrace the freedom I see just beyond reach. So that's all the stories and poems I have for everyone this week. I hope you've enjoyed what I brought to you, and I hope you'll come back again next week. Sláinte. Guramahagat. Thank you for listening to the show today. I hope you enjoyed the variety of stories and poems again this week. If you like the show, please like, subscribe, and reply, as this goes a long way towards reaching more listeners around the world. As a Sean K, I hope you will allow me to continue delighting you with a story or poem here under the Crann of beatha. Maybe they will bring you a smile, take you away from your troubles for a time. As I say goodbye this week, I wish to leave you with this Irish blessing as you go about your day. May your path rise up to meet you, and the sun warm your bonnet as you walk down the lane to the pub. May your friends and relations bring you a pint after you retell these stories and poems I give you here. Slán go fóill. Goodbye for now.